Good evening. I'd like to call the City of Fairhope Board and Adjustment meeting. Today is September the 19th. Before we get started, I'd like to introduce our board to you. We'll start from the end.
David Martin.
Ryan Baker.
Anil Vera.
Kathy Slagle.
Frank Lamia.
Thank you. So our first order of business is approval of the minutes from the August 15th, 2022 meeting.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. So motion carries unanimously. Our next order of business is to consider the agenda items. The first item, BOA 22.1, I have a conflict of interest in that because I sold the individual the property, so I'm going to let Kathy Slagle take over as chairperson for that portion of the meeting.
Good evening. This is BOA 22.10, public hearing to consider the request of the owners Sheila Hodges and Michelle Hodges for a 5-foot variance to the driveway side setback requirements, as well as a variance for the 3-foot separation to the side lot line to allow for the construction of a shared driveway between Lot 4 and 5 on Edel Street. The properties are zoned R2 medium density, single-family residential district, and both lots are approximately 0.17 acres. I'd like to have our Fairhope staff member explain the item, please.
Good evening.
Has everyone met Michelle? I know she was here
Here we
before,
go.
but was everybody here? David?
Yeah. Michelle, nice to meet you, Dave. All right, thanks for that intro. And applicants are here as well, so that's awesome. Okay, so Sheila and Michelle Hodges are requesting a 5-foot variance to the driveway side setback, as Kathy said, as well as a variance for the 3-foot separation side lot line to allow for a shared driveway on their adjoining lots. Kathy mentioned all that. R2, the lots are currently vacant. That's what they look like on the map and from the aerial. So when a driveway goes past the front of a house, it's required to have a 15-foot setback. And this proposed shared driveway is designed to overcome that, but it's going to be a 10-foot setback as opposed to 15, and I'll go to where it states that in Table 3 in the next slide. And then also goes in the small writing, it goes on to say in Table 3, that driveways shall not be within 3 foot of the side lot line. So they're also asking for that variance. They asked for this request due to safety reasons and due to the smaller than average lots for R2 zoning. Their lots are 50 feet wide, whereas R2 is usually 75-foot minimum width. So that's the Table 3-2. You can see 10-foot side setback, but then it has a small little b where it reads 15, and then also goes on to say that it shall not be within 3 feet of the side lot line. So this is what it looks like. Only Sheila's lot 4, so that's the one that actually has the proposed building. The other ones aren't there yet. And so the meshy looking area would be the shared 10-foot driveway, and it'd be made out of a pervious geo-web substance that we'll approve later on when they get there. So we recommend approval of BOA 2210 with the following conditions. The driveway shall be made from a pervious material and approved by the planning department. And the driveway shall be split among the common lot line 5 feet on each side, making the driveway a maximum of 10 feet wide.
Thank you. Any questions right now?
No.
The applicant is invited to make a presentation. Would you come up to the microphone and identify yourself, please?
I'm Sheila Hodges, and one daughter's here, the other daughter's not, but I'm looking forward to the opportunity to do this, and I really appreciate your consideration. if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Any questions? You look forward to this as a long-term arrangement, right?
Yes, ma'am. I'm a long-term resident of Baldwin County. I moved about 3 years ago over to Pensacola while my businesses were being liquidated. So now I'm retired. And when this property came up for sale directly across the street from my oldest daughter, and my youngest daughter said, let's go for it, it's just, and you know, who doesn't want to live in Fairhope, right? So being a long-term Foley, in fact, I did the Variance board for 20 years over there. I'm looking forward to being a citizen of Fairhope.
Are there any questions?
No.
I will say in regards to that long-term solution there, we did put in stuff, but there will be an easement agreement. So just in case one's not
Right.
owned by the family, there's no.
And,
they'll run with the land.
and it runs with the land, okay.
And I would think that's already being worked out.
We're going to do it after this meeting if everything goes well. Yes, sir.
Good. Glad to have you. I would like to open the public hearing at this time. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to say anything about this BOA 22.10? If not, I'll close the public hearing. And are there any other questions for anybody?
Just raise their hand.
I am open. Oh, yes? You want to come up to the microphone, please? You want to tell us your name and your
My name
address?
is Carol Skidmore, and I reside in Fairhope, right around two houses down from where we're talking about. And there's some other people here, too, that can probably say everything better. However, if you,
Can we get that exact address, please?
okay, you want to know the one he lived in, or the one, okay. 110 Powell Avenue. Okay. I'm going to start out, I'm not, my big mouth, but we had a house built next door to us. They're very nice people, but it was a 2-story house, which is a 3-story house. And the land between the different houses are supposed to be a certain thing. They didn't go by that. They're not supposed to be out to the alley as far as there. That was all done.
Wait, are you talking about the property on
I'm
Edel
talking
Street?
about-
Edel?
I'm talking about the alley, which is the alley that we're partly referring to, because the alley that they're, they're not talking about. Oh, okay, so, okay.
We'll invite you to come up again. Do we have a motion
Make a motion to approve as is
with the
with staff recommendations.
conditions?
Correct.
Is there a second?
Second.
We'll have a roll call vote.
David Martin,
Aye.
Ryan Baker,
Aye.
Kathy Slagle,
Aye.
Frank Lamia.
Aye.
Motion
carries.
has been approved, BOA 2210, with the 3 conditions. I will turn it back over to Anil as our chairperson.
Thank you. Our next order of business is BOA 22.11. It's a public hearing to consider the request of the applicant Ashley McKenzie for a special exception to allow for outdoor sales lot use for property zone B2 General Business District. And the PPIN number is 20224.
Good afternoon. My name is Casey Potts, and I'm presenting 140 South Section Street on behalf of staff. Need me to speak up? Okay. My name is Casey Potts, and I'm presenting 140 South Section Street on behalf of staff. We provided an updated letter from the applicant for you guys this afternoon, so it should have been at your seat upon your arrival. The applicant is requesting a special exception variance to allow the outdoor sales for the lot, specifically for plants. It is located at 140 South Section Street, and it is zoned B2. The definition of outdoor sales lot specifically states that it is a retail use where a significant portion of the merchandise, either in area or in business value, is typically stored outside during business hours. So this is an image of the site. It is currently owned by Advisors MD, who use the site for professional healthcare technology services. They're requesting Board of Adjustments approval of outdoor sales for the lot as a secondary use of the property. So there are going to be 2 functional businesses on site. The applicant describes the outdoor plant sales business as an outdoor plant store where seasonal outdoor-indoor plants and high-end outdoor furniture, including landscape lighting, can be sold in an outdoor garden environment. So here's some site context. We've got the zoning map on the left and an aerial on the right. The historical recorded plat includes a 5-foot green space easement along South Section Street, and that's going to be included in a condition later on. This is a schematic from the landscaping plan showing their proposed, improvements in terms of landscaping, as well as arbors, tables, and planter boxes. The green boxes indicated in this image are the proposed locations of the outdoor displays. Outdoor sales are proposed directly along the south of the building, as well as within this space here. So it is essentially all of the space except for the building. Based off of staff's review, the proposed outdoor sales will not impose on the surrounding area, nor will it impose on the safety, health, or welfare of the general public. But we do recommend that fertilizer or other odorous items be prohibited from sale on the property. So staff recommends that the Board of Adjustments approve the proposed special exemption for the subject property to allow outdoor sales for the lot in a B2 general zoning district, subject to the following conditions. The first being outdoor sales is restricted specifically to Lot 2, the lot with the building on it. Fertilizer and other odorous items will not be sold on the property. An ingress-egress easement across Lot 1 and a parking agreement with the owner of Lot 1 shall be provided to staff prior to issuance of building permits. And then the applicant is restricted from modifications of or sales within the 5-foot green space easement that I talked about. May be glad to answer any questions that you have.
Would it explain number 4 for me? I'm not following that.
Sure.
Casey, do you mind if I, there, so.
Yeah.
This goes back many years ago. There was a agreement, and actually the Fairhope Avenue, certain streets within the city require a 20-foot green space requirement. And this goes back over 20 years ago. It was going to be prohibitive on this site to provide that 20-foot. So the end result was a green space easement. And that is there it was there to give the city a planning area where there was not room in the right-of-way, with the main intent of being able to screen parking lots as required by the tree ordinance. So that's what was there, and we'll reserve the right to maintain those. I think there's going to be replacements of some of the shrubs. And then even within that site, the landscape plans currently show a hedge that will be inside that easement that will also screen the parking in some of the areas there.
So the purpose for that is just screening from the road?
Yes, it was for the landscape area in lieu of the 20-foot requirement. It's very unusual to have a green space. So it's in to figure out what the intent of that was.
And this is the green space. Okay.
And I have found some other information on Lot 1 since I think we started. Outdoor sales restricted to Lot 2 might be a little harsh. If we have approval of the owner of Lot 2, I think we can allow that. And there's potentially some agreements being worked out there.
Are they two different owners for the lot one, lot two?
So if owner of lot one happens to be able to lease that, I don't want to be so restrictive. We just want to make sure that with two lot owners, we're not giving permission to do that. So that was that language, and that's my fault for kind of not reviewing and letting Casey know the.
This is for a special use.
Special exception.
Right,
for the
so
use.
can you remind us of the process? If we grant that, they record it and it stays with the land?
They do not record, so this is not a variance. It is not recorded with the land. It is with the current use. You know, typically in things like this, you know, if we give a special exception for a restaurant and one restaurant goes in following, typically doesn't rise to the need that does kind of officially ride with the applicant here. So
Okay.
because we give an outdoor sales for this applicant to do plants, does not mean someone can come in and sell cars there.
And the other one that we did similar was the golf cart, where we approved just the sales.
That's right.
And have we had any issues?
No, we've, you know, the outdoor sale, in our regulations, there's allowed a little bit of sidewalk use, but when we do larger outdoor sales, it has to get this approval, so we have not heard any complaints on that one, other than prices.
Okay, thank you. At this time, we'd like the applicant to come up and make a presentation. If you'll state your name for us, please. Yeah.
I'm Ashley McKenzie. My husband Bricken is in the back. We do have Advisors MD. We've watched the lot for many years, and we really just want to make the corner pretty. And since our conversation, it has been inked and back with the attorneys that we have procured the lot next door, so lot one is within favorable conditions. We do hope to be able to replace the hedges that are there, keeping the charm of the oak trees, but adding a little bit of color within the current hedges, and that's the only thing to add is, and thank you, Anil, for the question, because I had that as well. What does 5 feet mean? Does that mean I can't put mulch in the 5 feet area in mums? So I cannot do that?
You can. Basically, what the way we've kind of interpreted, and this is a lot of, it was there so that the city can plant things so that we can screen. But as long, when the applicant is coming in and wanting to do more than that to screen, as long as the parking lot is screened, you know, I think we're meeting all the intents of that green space.
That's it. Thank you.
Is there any questions for the applicant?
Ashley?
Yes, ma'am.
What is your background in landscape or in
Absolutely not.
horticulture?
I'm in design, and I've been in computer design for a number of years. There's a few people on the board who know my father, and design is my heart, and I'm excited to just develop the space to make it pretty. But I'm in computer design, but I look forward to learning more and more about plants, and it's been a lot of fun and overwhelming.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, we'll open the public portion of the meeting. Is there anybody from the public that would like to speak for or against this project? Okay, we'll close the public portion. Board members, do we have any discussion or an motion?
Before you make a motion, may I propose an amendment to condition 1 as presented from the staff, that instead of it reading outdoor sales shall be restricted to lot 2, proof of agreement from owner of lot 2 shall be provided prior to allowing sales in lot 2.
Okay.
And I think if a motion was made to approve with staff recommendations as amended, that would cover it.
So on lot 1, they would not be allowed to sell anything? Is that the way I'm reading it?
On lot 2, that is not owned, but as long as they have a contract.
In between them, okay.
Yes, I think that is sufficient.
And you, the city would be privy to that contract?
We can make sure that the easement agreement and all those things, we can make sure that that's in place.
Make a motion to approve the staff amended recommendations.
I second it.
Okay, we will take a roll call vote. Start from the end, please.
Aye.
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 Motion carries unanimously. Okay, our last order of business is BOA 22.12. It's a public hearing to consider the request of the owners, Edward and Dana Hamley, for a 2-foot variance to the front setback requirements and a 14-foot variance to the side street setback requirements for the property zoned R2. So at this time, we'll have staff
Thank you.
give us a report, please.
The applicant is requesting a building setback line variance to the lot at 107 Kiefer Avenue. It is approximately 200 feet east of the intersection with Bayview Avenue. The subject property is zoned R2 medium density, and it requires a 35-foot front and rear setback, as well as 10-foot side and 20-foot side street. The applicant is currently requesting a 2-foot variance to the front setback requirement and a 14-foot side street variance to the side street setback requirement on the west side of the property. Here's the zoning map. It's surrounded by R2 property and the aerial. So we have a little bit of case history. It was heard before the Board of Adjustments in 2018. They requested variance to the R2 setbacks as well. At that time, staff interpreted the front as being along the alleyway and the rear being along Kiefer Avenue. And the request was specifically that they would have a 24-foot rear setback in lieu of the 35-foot rear, which, as indicated on the image, is what we would consider the front today. A 6-foot side street in lieu of the 20-foot side street, which is here, and an 8-foot side setback in lieu of the 10-foot side setback, which is here. BOA 18.06 was approved unanimously at that time. At present, staff interprets the front and rear setbacks differently than originally presented in 2018. We interpret the front as along Kiefer Avenue and the rear as being along the alleyway. The present request is, again, a 2-foot variance to the front setback requirement and a 14-foot variance to the side street setback requirement. Something certainly worth discussing is whether or not we consider the alleyway to be a side street or a typical side setback. So that was something that we were hoping to discuss this afternoon with the Board of Adjustments. The requirement for R2 property is 10,500 square feet, and that's just the typical lot standard as set forth in the zoning ordinance. The subject property itself is 5,906 square feet, which is about 56% of what is typically required. The buildable area is indicated in blue, based off of what our lot standards require. The application specifically requests, as I said, a 2-foot variance to the front. The required front setback is 35 feet, and the resultant would be 33 feet. The trellis at the front of the home is not considered part of the principal structure because it does not have a roof. So that is how we interpret what is a part of the principal structure. The side street setback, they're requesting a 14-foot variance from it. Typically that's 20 feet, but the resultant would be 6 feet, as indicated here. The red dashed line would be the resultant setbacks from this variance request. With these setback changes, the resultant buildable area would be approximately 19,005 square feet. When I initially did the staff report, I came up with a slightly higher number, and upon review, when I was making the presentation, I determined that it was a little bit off. I included the area along here in error. But as noted, within the R2 lot development standards, 37% of the lot can be covered. So in terms of that specific lot area, which was 5,900 square feet, that would be about 2,185 square feet. So this resultant lot area is well below the maximum lot coverage allowed on that lot. Are you kind of following me? Lot area is different than.
What about the garage behind it? Does that count towards the lot coverage?
It does.
Okay.
A few general comments. The alleyway width will be unaffected. This case specifically is affecting private property, so the alleyway width would be unchanged. And the home and its pergola will not be any closer to Kiefer Avenue than the existing structure. That was a specific concern that many residents had expressed in their letters, and we wanted to clarify that for you guys. So here is a picture of the survey, and what I'm going to do is overlay the proposed revisions and the proposed home that would go on it, so you can see what I'm talking about. Not much of a difference.
Oh, all right, go over that.
Do it one more time.
Yeah, the residence that we look at now is,
That's existing.
that's existing.
Yes, so we scaled in the proposed change. And the hatched area is the home, and this box right here is the proposed revised trellis.
So this is a tear down and rebuild, right?
Correct.
And so the new house is a little bit bigger than the existing house, correct? The overlay part of it?
Correct. It is just a little bit bigger than the existing.
Than the existing home?
Correct. Alright. So staff recommends conditional approval of the variance as follows: 2-foot variance to the front setback requirement and 14 foot to the side street setback requirement. One condition of approval that we have added since the time of staff report was that they provide an updated survey at the time of building permit that shows the location of the fence and any other structures adjacent to the right-of-way. So,
A question, because we're changing the front to Kiefer, that's the reason we now are, requiring the 20-foot on the west side, and the reason for the big difference is because it is now,
And that requires a little bit of an explanation. It's one thing to make interpretations, it's another when there's an existing variance with interpretations already approved. So, and there's some clarification sometimes with these unopened right-of-ways and what is a corner and what's not. I can see the logic of why this interpretation was made. In essence, it comes down to the definition of frontage of a lot, which reads in general, it's the smallest dimension lot fronting a public street. Well, what kind of gets into question here is a public street. This is not a street by definition. Street requires a name. I think kind of got a little bit too deep in the interpretation of the codes and thinking it's a paved area. We do have requirements on some unpaved areas, but it's still named right-of-way. We had a variance request recently, I believe on White, it was an open right-of-way, but it was a 50-foot right-of-way that could have a street there in the future. There will not be a traditional street here on this alley. It's 20-foot easement. We do not name those. Some we don't even maintain. I believe we do maintain this one. So there's very good logic that would apply if the front is on Kiefer. You don't have to have the 20-foot side setback. So because this was already in the variance, we wanted to kind of have this conversation. If this came to me, I would view this as a 10-foot required setback, so it's a 4-foot variance request in lieu of a 14-foot as we're saying here. I don't believe this is a traditional steep street corner that would require that secondary frontage. But to answer your question, and then in addition to that, the frontage on the alley didn't quite make sense when there's an existing building there. And then someone did ask us, and I can maybe get back and look here because as I know my board is familiar, we did make a change to the zoning ordinance that doesn't allow you to expand accessory buildings and that are in nonconformity. The building permits before this garage, the second story was added, which it is nonconforming, was given before we made those changes. So as long as they're not using that second floor as, an accessory dwelling unit, it's illegal and not part of this variance request. It does have implications on lot coverage, things like that, but I think Casey has done those calculations for you. I did get another request on what is the existing building. So at its most, from the lot line is 8.7 feet, where the request is 6 feet. You know, this is kind of a tough one because this is the definition of a variance, where you can give a variance. It's lot shape, you know, size of shape and topography. This is obviously a platted lot. We have many of these kind of pie-shaped lots in when they were originally platted. So it is there for a hardship, but what do you give? You know, the existing building was 8.7, but maybe that went over in other areas. So the request, I think, was somewhat reasonable. Didn't take up the whole frontage. If you look here, there's still some areas not built upon. You know, one of the challenges, but it's not something we should address in this variance. There's questions on, should we allow the trellises on the front of a house in a front yard? They're allowed now. They have been for years. If it doesn't have a roof over it, you know, that's not something we're trying to overcome within a variance. That's allowed. It was allowed to be built, and I believe the current owner actually wants to save the wisteria and things that are in there now, so saving that. So that front that you see outside of that Casey highlighted is open air pergola that is currently allowed.
Given that it's an existing site with an existing house on it, help me with the hardship here. I know it's an odd-shaped site, but it exists. I mean, what's the hardship?
What exists, but it exists across boundaries of the building setbacks. I mean, it doesn't fit currently within there. So is the size, shape, topography of this lot unique to generate, you know, you've heard me say multiple times, just because it's a 66-foot lot, there's 500 other ones around there. That's not unique. There's no other lot that looks like this. So look, and has these exact dimensions, you know, that it's what's around there. You know, there's some kind of, and there's some strange things. The property next here, you know, you look in that backyard, it's fully covered. It doesn't meet the 25%. You know, I don't know if these were done through, you know, these might all be 80-year-old, you know, existing nonconformities. But, you know, the question, I think there is no doubt there's a hardship on this. But as we've mentioned before, it's what extent is the Board of Adjustment willing to give? Do you leave it at 8 foot? Or are you willing to give the 6 foot? And that's kind of a subjective debate, whether, but I think this is boilerplate definition of a hardship, in our opinion, and the legal representation that we saw on those hardships.
The previous one that was approved had a 8 foot on the side. They're not requesting for that this time?
That's right.
No, on the other side. If the house was slid over those 2 feet, it would still be that 8 feet off of the alley, probably. It'd be similar to where it is existing on that side. Mm-hmm. Was there a reason before why they requested 8 feet and not, I mean, do you know the history enough to know the difference, why there's been that change? Okay.
Yeah, the applicants are here.
And just out of curiosity, I mean, if all this had just basically been left as it was approved before and the house had been shifted, it would have all fit, right?
Let's see, the existing house is,
I mean, just move it back over to the 8 feet and you're not asking for the additional 2 feet. I mean, it's all the same. It all fits.
yeah, you're giving a variance on both sides. I mean, typically, if you've got an alley, I'd rather be closer to the alley than pushing closer to another house. You know, the separation between houses is.
But I mean, it would work.
But yes, it would. I mean, it would fit with what's currently built.
And
closer.
what's already been approved for that lot to build on, right?
No.
Nothing is approved right now. That variance expired.
Okay.
So there's nothing approved right now. You have nonconformities, and you can build back in the footprint of that by leaving walls up. But once you take those down, it goes back to the nonconformity goes away, and it goes back to what the setbacks are. So that would require another variance. So yes, what was approved is expired.
So Hunter, so the existing home, what's the distance between the existing home and the property to the, I guess, to the right of Kiefer? Is the east?
10.4 and 10.6 feet.
10.4, and then 10.6 is the current.
It's on the screen.
And along
Okay.
that, on the west side, what's the difference between the present home and the linear footage of the distance that the new proposed home will take up? What's the difference between the present? So
just
it's only
looking-
sticking out 2 more feet,
That's correct. Not into the alley, but.
and there's no difference in the front, and there's no difference in the rear.
That's right.
So the only change is the 2 feet on the west side.
Other than the layout shifts a little bit, as Casey pointed out, you can see here, there's a little bit of there are a couple more jogs, but there's the line. So, and it doesn't touch 6 feet all the way from the
No.
front to the property to the back. But here's where it's 6 feet. Now, I always tell you, you're given a variance for the property line, not for a specific site plan.
And
So they could eventually go back and fill that in if they wanted to.
If the variance was recorded with the land, that could be, we would, if they acted upon this, recorded it, and then came back with an addition here that met within that setback, we would grant it without coming back to you.
my concern was the homes to the east. So this distance from Kiefer will not change, and it will not do any blocking of present homes.
And do we have the elevations, Casey? Yes. It is, I believe the new home would be 2 stories, but at the front, it's keeping the pergola. It has to remain open. So what you see from essentially this line forward is a.
Where are you?
Can you see on your screen?
Yeah.
My mouse?
Oh, yeah, I see where you are.
So in essence, and generally this area, that's the existing front of the home, and then everything within this box is a pergola. And the new house shows this, so what Casey's illustrating is this house is currently built, the front wall is 2 feet over the front setback. So that's required, that's where the 2-foot variance request is to the front. Everything included within the arbor is not prohibited by our zoning ordinance.
All right, you mentioned 2-story. Would you elaborate on that? It's going to be 1 story in the front, did you say?
I can't remember, do you have, I'll pass this around. So just, I'll kind of show you two, and you can pass it around, that's the front. So you can see the pergola. You can kind of see it steps back, so as you get back to the rear, it does have the 2nd story, but not right there.
What's the footage of the 1-story before it goes to 2-story?
It's pretty much 2-story, it's just it's a little inset because the building is, you can see it kind of gets easier to see on that one. So if you see these walls here, where they go up and don't go as high, it scales down toward the Kiefer side. And these are the exterior walls shown on the current plans. And then as you get to the back, and that might be the garage.
The garage beyond, that's not changing.
What view is this?
So this is from the rear.
But there's a garage there. Oh,
So this
before,
would
I
be-
see,
Yeah,
yeah.
and that may be something we can clarify.
Okay.
So Hunter, one question. So we see the drawing, so does that mean they have to build that if we give them a variance, or they can change it?
They can change it. What I will tell you is this was, I don't think that's the intent on this one. We actually received a building permit with full plans. And then they found out the variance had expired. So I don't think that's the intent here. When you go to that level of detail in building plans, there's typically the intent is do that. We've seen things happen in the past where that falls apart and if you got the variance, but typically, if it's not acted upon, it goes away. It expires in a year.
In the comments, there were a lot of comments about the alley and what this might do to alley, or I don't see where this infringes except for 2 feet closer in one point. Otherwise, I don't see the influence it makes on the alley from what's there now.
I agree. I don't see with a burden on the alley here. I think the fence, and you see the condition we added since the reports went out. When we went back and looked, the survey we have does not reflect the current fence, but we can't tell where that is. So within the building footprint, we need a new survey to show that's a few years old.
Can we also limit the location of the fence versus being on the property line, matching this 6-foot setback or anything like that? Or is there, as far as conditions, because that fence right now is over the property line, it looks like.
On the survey you have, that's been altered. We just don't know what. And I think that is a condition that we want to ensure. The fence cannot be outside the property line.
Yeah.
Okay? You can't adversely possess public rights of way. So with all of these things, that's why we added the condition. We will ensure that the fence is maintained within the property, or at minimum at the property line.
So right now, we don't know if the fence is on their property or on the right-of-way.
The survey within your packet showed the fence outside the property line, the one that had been there for years. That is not the way the fence looks today.
Okay.
But with the naked eye, it's hard for us to go out and say, where is there's not stakes or, anything out there, so.
That's the only area that looked like it was adversely affecting the alley right now.
Yes. I mean, you get back in that alley, it's tight. There's a lot of buildings built, but those were done long ago. Now, the second story was added in recent time, but that didn't require a variance at the time. Had a building permit, and didn't further encroach into the alley or any more than it was. So I think you can see a lot of those carports down that alley have some of the similar. Actually, some of them are built closer to the rear line instead of the 5 foot is required. So that was certainly a non-conforming structure. There's no doubt there.
Got one more question, just so I'm clear on it. So the existing house that's there is 10.4 from the property line. Is that correct, on the right-hand side?
Yes, sir.
On the bay side, on the left-hand side, it's 10.6.
On the left-hand side, it's 8. 8.7 here?
8.7, it looks like.
8.7 is the closest as shown on the survey.
Okay, 8.7. And then the front of the house, there's no change on the front of the house?
This shows 34, but this is the old.
The new one has actually
Okay. Let's get, you tell me in case that one. This is the new one, so when you were asking about the old,
Yeah.
right there, on the new one. Okay. Well, yes, so this is the as proposed, what the end result would be as proposed with the variance.
So what's the difference between the?
2 feet
2 feet
on the left-hand side.
west.
1 feet on
Yeah, 1 foot on the Kiefer side. So
I'm
33.
confused. So, all right, this is the new house or the old house?
The new
house is
2
1
feet.
foot closer to the street
Okay.
than
Kiefer.
the original house was.
Than the original house,
Uh-huh.
okay.
And it's about 2 to 2.5 feet closer to the alley than the original house was.
That's right.
I don't think the house is, I think it's right on where it is right now, as far as the front of the house.
Okay, just, let's see. All right.
As skilled in, whenever we were using the documents provided by the applicant, it came out to be like 33.7 feet, so we rounded down. for the sake of being, I guess, I don't know.
And a lot of surveys, there's a margin of error there.
That's the word,
decimal
margin of
point.
error.
So we wanted to make sure there was enough room to accommodate. The intent is to build at the same front facade line.
Gotcha.
As currently there.
So the front stays the same.
Yes.
And what about the back?
Back is no variance request. It would stay 35 feet.
Because there's a house there now, are they grandfathered in for that footprint? Or once they tear down, are they, do they have to start all over and abide?
Yes. I mean, if that house where you see the difference on the front and that left side as you're looking at the plans right now, it is a non-conforming structure.
Right.
If it comes down, then that has to meet without a variance. So I'm guessing, and I wasn't here in 18, I'm guessing they came in, got a variance, and then didn't follow through in that time, but came in with a building permit to do that, and it had expired. The variance had expired. So that is why we're here asking for that. When we sat down and looked at the frontage and some of those things, and this is kind of where we're at. We didn't really want to give some of the variances, didn't see where that was logical to give on both sides. So I think this was where we kind of landed on what was actually needed.
Okay, thank you.
And the applicant is
Yeah.
here.
Okay, so this time, we'd like the applicant to come up, and if anybody has any questions, or if the applicant would like to add some more, if you'll state your name for people.
Hi, Ed Hamley, and thank you for your consideration. What we did was, we had bought this house like 8-9 years ago, and weren't sure what we were going to do with it. We rented it out for a long period of time, and then we moved into it 2.5 years ago. And while we were trying to figure out what to do with it. In 2018, we did have some plans drawn up and came in for a variance, just because of the hardship of the alleyways, going behind and to the side. What's existing there right now is really non-conforming. So to do anything, we wanted to see if we could get a variance, and it was approved back in 2018. We had a couple of kids in college and whatnot, so we didn't go forward with the plan at that point in time. We hired a new draftsman to do new plans. We scaled our plans back. We have a new plan that's, under 2,000 square feet. I think it's modest. It fits in with like cottage type theme of Fairhope. We hired Chris Francis to try to find a way to save the wisteria vine that's out front. So I think it's going to look nice when we have it all done. But we had our draftsman go down to the city, and unfortunately he didn't meet with the planning people. As I said, here's what was approved before, to see if there's anything else we have to do, to get these plans done. And so he came back after talking to probably someone in the building department and said, hey, they think you're fine. So we did the plans and submitted them for permit, and that's when we found out that we had to come back because we hadn't done it within a year. So what the plans were done was really in the footprint that had been approved in 2018. We had him kind of use those same setbacks. Now I know that we're looking at the front of the house, back of the house is flopped around a little bit, but right now we're ready to go with the plans that we have. And where we are towards the front of Kiefer, it's not any more. On the sides, it's just a little more in one part. We have Seth Moore doing a new survey, and so we'll be sure that all the fences on the alley are on the property line or within the property line. That alley is a little tight. There's a lot of properties that are a lot closer to it than ours currently. But we're trying to be respectful of others and build something that's going to be nice. The current house, although we would want to save it, it's really failing. And I think if, it just needs to for Fairhope to keep up, this house needs to be refreshed, and that's why we're doing these plans.
What's the square footage of the house that's there now?
Like 1,200, and I think we're going to be 1,900 or just under 2,000.
That includes the second floor?
Yes.
What's the footprint square footage, do you know?
Uh,
About 12, I mean, it's
That's
similar.
what-
to
Yeah,
size.
it's about the same, not much different.
The footprint, I'm sorry, I'm not talking, but I just was at the dentist, and
This is
Yeah.
my wife Dana Hamley.
Sorry, and my mouth is slurring, and I haven't been drinking, but it's just this. Anyway, we're just wanting to extend at the very back. There was like a little porch that was put on the back then, and we just want to extend that 2 feet. That's the only difference in the footprint of this house. We don't intend to build a skyscraper. We don't want to take away the beauty of the house. Our slab is currently leaking, and the house itself is failing. And so we wanted to keep our vine, keep the beauty of Fairhope, but just extend part of the back of the house by 2 feet. We don't want to extend the front of the house at all. And we want porches and things that make Fairhope nice. And we don't want a big house. So we don't want a skyscraper, and I know the one you're talking about, and it is a skyscraper on Powell, but, you know, we just wanted to keep it, you know, within Fairhope and within the charm of it. So, anyway, I'm sorry. I'm going to sit down now.
Scott Coleman just gave her a new cap, so. Any other questions? Thank you for your consideration.
Okay, thank you. This time we'll open the meeting to the public portion. If anybody from the public would like to speak, and if you'll come up and state your name, we'll just do it in order. Okay.
They're leaving.
Pauline, if you'll state your name for the record.
Pauline Anders, and I live at 256 North Bayview Street. And part of my concern is this house, I mean, the lot was a garden lot. We used to have garden lots, and they're small, and they were just scattered in the old districts. And zoning was sort of imposed over us after a fact. And so they decided that anything you had to be able to build on it. So it was already, you know, it was a garden lot, and the city saw fit to say you could build on it, and then it got built, and that was a variance in the first place, to be able to build on such a small lot. So it's just, you have to think about when you're doing, what you're doing to a little neighborhood when you change things, like a garden lot, and then they have to be built on, and then you have to make it so they can build enough. I'm not talking about the specifics of this one now, just in general, how I think sometimes they don't pay attention. And to get the package, and it says that, that said this is, it was approved 2 years ago. Well, we never got notice that anything was going on 2 years ago. We never got that. We don't remember it, but none of our neighbors remember getting it either. So how could you have approved one 2 years ago when none of us ever got notice of it? So that way, and we got notices this time, which we appreciate. And I hope you've all read the letters in here, because a lot of people couldn't be here. My big concern is, from what I see on the, so I think I can tell you what page it's on in your packet, if it's the same as, but on the packet where they show the 2020 survey, it shows, well, the alleyway is paved, and it's about 9 feet paved, but it's 16 feet wide. So are you really counting from the alley, or are you doing from the pavement? And a lot of the old houses were built right on that alley, maybe because they had the garden lots on the other side. I don't know, but they were built that way, so I don't know if the alley starts being counted from the back of those houses or over 16 feet. But as Ed said, it's a crowded alley, and there are a lot of new things that have been approved there. And I know Mrs. Skidmore wanted to address one of those. We don't understand how that tower got built, that huge thing got built, and it went farther back than any other house, encroached on that alley. Everybody most everybody has parking on the alley, and they're backing in and out. And so we're just concerned, and, because we're not sure about surveys, we're not sure about, it looks like the fence right now, and I think that they've addressed that they could change it and would change it. That's my big concern, is that it's not safe with all the buildings, and especially now, we had a lot of construction going on this last year, a lot. But everybody has carports and there are garages, and they're backing out, their children riding bikes in there, there are people walking in there. It's and it's dangerous if we don't have good view. I don't know how emergency vehicles get in there. So I'm very sympathetic with what they want to do, and I think there's a way to work it out where you could do that. But I want to make sure that their fence or no part of their property can encroach on that whole 16 feet of alleyway, so that it'll be safer and people can get in and out. And I thank you very much.
So the alley is 16 feet, correct?
The alley is 16 feet, but the pavement is 9 feet.
Okay.
The
But-
right-of-way is 16.
The right-of-way, but I don't think they're allowed to build on that 16-foot alleyway.
Well,
There might
but
be a-
then there's
there
a
might have been a
survey that
fence
shows
there
that a fence is there.
Okay.
And it does seem very tight on that side, and it does, I know, it just makes it a little harder going through there. And of course, there are also, utility poles that take up some of the space too, and so it can make it very hard to maneuver. But I think, just if you've read the concerns, I think it's possible for everybody to have what they want.
Well, and could I ask a point of
Sure.
clarification? Because there was many references to garden lots. We went back as far as when these lots were platted, and there are no reference to garden lots. These are lots of record. So we cannot deny someone, even if it was 50 years ago, there's been a house here for quite some time. I just would like some clarification. Where is the idea that these were garden lots coming from?
I just always heard that, and that's what they were. They were smaller, and they were on the other alley, and people said that's what they've always used for garden lots. And, everything was planted out there before the city, well, Single Tax was doing a whole lot of that at the time, and they were building those lots. And so then when the city came and started zoning, a lot of lots had already been created.
This is certainly a non-conforming lot. Most of the lots in there are, because they don't meet our current regulations. So absolutely right.
Yeah, and that's because the old colony lots, none of those actually fit, because it just got superimposed. But, so, that kind of thing needs to be considered. But in this case, the alley needs to be protected. It's for the safety of everybody.
Thank you. Wait, Ms. Skidmore, if you'll come up to the front to, if you'll state your name for the record, because they're recording it, so we would need, and we can all hear also.
Teacher with a loud mouth, but anyway. I
You'll
wanna
state your
know, I
name.
guess, from this gentleman.
Ms. Skidmore, if you'll state your name for the record
Okay,
first.
sorry.
And your address.
Carol Skidmore, neighbor on 107 Powell Avenue, or 110 Holland Avenue. When he said the total amount of space, was that the house?
And just
Or
so
does that
everybody knows, I don't want to be rude.
or
but
does that
if you can ask
include-
them the questions, they'll turn around when we get through with the public hearing and make sure we get everything addressed.
Okay, I'm all new to this kind of
It's
thing.
okay.
Anyway, did that include there was going to be an office up there, so it's a pretty big building. And I would watch, because I walk in the neighborhood like a lot, and I would see the trucks come by, not only the ones that were building houses around it, but our city trucks for trash, trucks for the stuff that they're taking back to the other. And at the corner of that thing that gets stepped on, they had to replace with brick, and there had an air conditioner there, and it was too close for that turn. And I just want to know that, I can't do anything about that. It's been built and it's done for, but is the house as big as, what was it, 1,300 square feet? Is that in?
Well, the footprint's not much bigger. it is bigger than that because it goes 2 stories instead of 1 story, right?
Right, it has a place to put your car in and garage.
They already have a garage there, yes.
They have a garage, and above the garage is, well, you can use it for apartment. They use it for a desk or a computer, I think, but.
Yeah, I don't know what's above the.
But does
they
that
can
count?
answer
Does the footage of that should be counted in the total space they have in their house?
That was the square footage that was counted in the total lot coverage, yes, ma'am.
It was?
And it's-
Okay,
yes,
I
ma'am.
just want to be sure that it was.
Yes, ma'am. And we, just for clarification, when we make those calculations, we count what is touching the ground, the footprints, not total square footage, so it's lot coverage that we're looking at. So-
Okay, at that turn where we are, they have the garage and they have that building. All right, right next door to them is a beautiful white house that finally got redone. They all feed into that alley. Across the street from the garage of theirs, you've got another house that's so close, and they're, the flooring in the alley is just crumbling. And then if you turn around and you go straight this way, and here's the corner, and you go this way, you've got a whole nother house that's got a 2-car garage. Right next to it, there's about this much space, and then you've got another house, and then you go this much space, and that's, I know that's crowded. Those people can't hardly pull their car out. They've got to be able to pull their car out a certain way and park their car a certain way. And those are the personal things that I just see that they have to just be really careful this time, because I think that they had started with the measurements that they had instead of putting up that garage. That's my opinion. No more.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm Farrell Anders, live at 256 North Bayview. I feel like we're a little blindsided by the 20-foot variance diminishing, 14-foot variance diminishing by 12 feet with, without our knowing it before we came here. But that's, I understand the legal dilemma with that. And I guess we should have named our alley Bluff Alley or something like that, like we've done recently. But is there any reason, based on what we've heard today, that the variance should only be 1 foot in the front? If the house is going to be constructed as planned, shouldn't the variance be 1 and not 2? And when I went down to the city and inquired about looking at the file to see what the plans were, I was told that even though the site plan was submitted, it can be changed. Now, I understand from the Hamleys that they've already had this drawn and they've actually submitted it to planning and zoning, so they don't have any intentions of having it changed. So that's pretty important that it's going to stay the way that has been presented to you. I haven't seen the plans for the house yet, but I'm glad that they're planning to use most of the footprint. And as Polly and I both have stated, as long as the footprint stays substantially the same, we don't have any objection, because we know that they don't want to live in a 1,200 square foot house, and we don't want them to. And but the footprint is important, and now it's pretty much an inconsequential variance, but we would like to stick with the same footprint on the east side of that alley. That's pretty important. So, based on Ms. Hamley's comments about the back porch and everything, it's essentially going to be within the same footprint, and if the site plan keeps it on the same footprint on the alley, then I don't have any objection to that.
Is there anybody else from the public that would like to speak for or against? If you'll state your name for the record.
Nikki Olson, and we live at 252 North Bayview, and our carport backs right up to their fence, and right now it's tremendously hard to even get out of the driveway. And so my question is, I know they've talked about moving the fence, but is that fence now going to extend all the way past their porch and up to the other part of the house that's going to go right to their property line on the new? Yeah.
Ask the families.
That's,
Yeah.
We're not planning.
it's staying right where it is.
Yeah.
Well, unless it's over the property.
Yeah, we're not planning to extend that. In fact, part that we were changing the back of the house.
I'm sorry,
Yeah, if you'll come up.
we have recordings for.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, we're not planning to do, and we'll get the fence, you know, I think the survey that was from 2020 was before we did the new fence. And so we're having Seth Moore redo that right now, so we'll make sure the fence is proper. Yeah, we did have, you know, part of the reason why we had a fence is because we do have, you know, a couple dogs they like to keep behind the fence. And, you know, people were driving on our lawn. In fact, our water main box got cracked as people were driving across the alley there. So we, just to protect our utilities and whatnot, we put that there. So, you know, I know that the alley's squish, but, you know, we can't have people driving across our water stuff.
That's right, close to the property line, right? So if the alley is 16 feet, but only 9 feet of it are paved, how do they determine where, I mean, because right now that fence is right on the, I know it's going to be changed, maybe, and maybe not, but how do they determine where that, since the alley's not, I mean, it's paved to the full 16?
They survey it, put survey lines out, stakes out there to show where the right-of-way is.
So we'll see a new survey.
You should see stakes out there when they survey.
And
We'll see the survey with the building permit, and we'll ensure that it stays within that. Now, I will say, I think it could be something to condition, and I don't think there's a problem with this, but on the northwest corner, I think a fence to the property line right there would be a problem. But I think that's in general regulations on when we have site clearance, turning radiuses, some of those things because of how tight this is. Is there any plans to build that back in the corner? And we would look at that when we get a building permit, you know. So I think making sure the fence is inside the property line is something we can accomplish with that survey.
Well, will we see that before this is finally approved? Or is that something that's going to be
No, it's not a
approved
public
today,
process.
subject to this?
This is the variance that tells where they have, kind of where their boundaries are. That's what this variance is, and then we review, or actually our building department, was stated incorrectly. The application for the permit goes to our City of Fairhope Building Department, not planning. But we do look at those permits for zoning compliance, and we make sure that that's accommodated.
Thank you.
He's got another question.
Yes.
I'm Farrell Anders again. I wanted to clarify something I said before. If the front of the house is not going to change, shouldn't the 2-foot variance be denied? I misunderstood. I thought it was going to be a foot forward. But
So, and Casey explained that. Let me we talked a lot of numbers. Right now, the house is more than 1 foot beyond the line, not fully 2 feet. So when we see those decimal points somewhere between 1.7 and when you get 5 surveyors go out, and they're gonna be some decimal points off. So we recommended the variance be 2 feet and not decimal points to accommodate the existing front facade.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. It would not be changing. The front facade is what it is what's proposed.
Only the 2 sides are changing
It's-
and increasing.
One side.
It's changing, but if it's a tear down, so
Okay.
if the pergola stays up but the house comes down,
Okay.
then for a moment in time, all nonconformities go away.
Right.
So to build back in that same place, they would need a 1 foot, 3 to 1'7" variance on the front, and then whatever is granted on the side. So that's where, that's the request, and that's the intent, I think, of what's wanting to build.
Okay, can you repeat that one more time?
If they tear down
There-
right now.
okay.
Complete tear down, but leave the pergola standing in the
Right.
yard, and build the front of the house right back to the pergola.
To the existing home footprint.
Yes,
that was it.
exactly where it was, then they would need a 2-foot variance. Technically, that would be 1 feet and some odd inches, but we want to give that 2 feet to make sure, because one surveyor is going to say one dimension, another's going to say another. We don't like to use decimal places for the variance. So, and then if they tear down right now, if they left the west-facing wall, they
Okay.
could build a line from front to back at 8, with that same setback. They're not doing
They're
that,
not
but
doing
where it kind of squares off some of the jogs, it goes to 6 foot instead of 8.7.
And that looks like, based on the plan, pretty minimal. Does the plan get tied to the approval? I mean, the footprint get tied to the approval?
No, sir, we can't do that, unfortunately. The variance runs with the land, so whatever is granted here it changes the setbacks once acted upon. So it doesn't change the setback just within 5 feet, it changes the setback along that property line and could come back in 80 years and there's a 6-foot setback. So whatever however the zoning ordinance has been, that is granted with the land. Now, there will always be a record of what was proposed. People can burn bridges, architects and applicants can burn bridges by saying they're going to do one thing and doing something else, but in reality, the variance grants runs with the land.
If I may add as well, whenever they come to propose whatever they do decide to build on the property, it is still subject to building department review, and it'll be subject to the 37% coverage maximum.
But they could build right up to that 8-foot setback, new setback, all the way across the west property line.
It would not be 8 foot, they're proposing 10 feet. As of today, there's only 10 feet setback on the side, on that eastern boundary.
I'm at the west.
On the west side, as proposed, it would be 6 feet.
Right.
So, but.
And you can see based on the angle it is, some of that's not logical to build all the way up and down that
Right.
side without, acute angles or that's something that works well. I'm sure there's 2 architects up here that are gonna watch me, but that's probably not right.
And, so the existing garage, you're going to leave the existing garage, and above it is an empty room, or what's there right now?
It's used as an office space right now.
Okay.
Extra storage.
Okay.
To be clear, it cannot be converted into accessory, a living space that has full bathrooms and all of those things. They can't have half baths, so I'm sure that's how it was permitted, but.
And what year did we permit the garage?
That was right before, it was very close to when we made the ordinance to not expand nonconformities. It did come in, I actually checked that date. So now, if you had a 1-story garage that was non-conforming, meaning taking up too much of the lot, the required rear yard, or being too close to either property line, you can't expand that, either horizontally or vertically. But this was built before we made those amendments.
Did you own it when it was?
Yes.
What year was that the garage was approved?
2020.
Oh,
And we built it, and we just rebuilt the existing garage in the same footprint, but we used the walls of the existing garage. We didn't change that footprint.
so do you have a half bath up there? Is that a half? What is what year was the present home built?
Well, you know, I know.
1970, maybe 1972, right around here.
Okay.
Okay. Is there anybody else from the public that would like to speak for or against this project? And we did receive some letters, so make sure that everyone has read those letters also. Okay, we'll close the public portion. And board members, is there any discussion or comments? I just, maybe with the public comments, I think most people are okay with it not expanding past what they currently have. Is that what I'm hearing?
I think so. They don't want their line of sight to the bay interfered with, and there's little encroachment into the alley area. That's the summation I get.
Right. Which they are or not, which they are not doing.
Right, which they seem to be going along with. What do you think, Frank?
I make a motion to approve the variance request with the conditions from the staff.
I'll second.
We'll do a roll call vote.
Aye.
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 Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Okay. Last order of business, is there any things for next month?
We have one case coming to you next month.
Okay.
We do have a meeting.
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay.
A second.
All right. Aye.
It's a legal thing.
Thank you.
So,